Senator Tom Cotton. He is the chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence and the author of 7 Things You Can't Say About China. Senator, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, thank you, Maria. It's good to be on with you.
Will we see the Tulsi Gabbard vote in the open, or is that happening behind closed doors?
Maria, we'll conduct the hearing for Ms. Gabbard exactly the way we did for Director Ratcliffe at the CIA. The committee rules only release the vote tallies, not the roll call itself. However, as with Mr. Ratcliffe and past nominees, as a practical matter, the vote roll call is usually known within just a few minutes as senators make statements or the media make inquiries. So you can be confident that everyone will know where everyone stands on Ms. Gabbard, as well as everywhere where they stand on every other nominee that President Trump sent to the Senate.
Mr. Chairman, how do you assess these hearings right now? I mean, I've been talking about this all morning, the fact that you're in the majority, but it seems like the Democrats keep coming up with ideas to, stall or make it longer. Like now they're trying to postpone Russ' vote as if he's controversial in any way, shape or form because of the freeze in funding. How's it going?
Well, the Democrats are certainly good at manufacturing a lot of baseless claims and allegations. I mean, consider Ms. Gabbard. For years, they've questioned her patriotism. This is a woman who served 21 years in uniform, who's passed 5 background checks. I reviewed the latest one last week. It's clean as a whistle. So there's no end to what the Democrats will manufacture as baseless claims or procedural stalling tactics for these nominees. However, we're moving along. We're getting them confirmed. We've told the Democrats we can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way. And the hard way means we're going to be in through nights and through weekends. The Democrats want to do that through Friday night on Pete Hegseth. That's exactly what we did. We got him confirmed late Friday night. Then they threw in the towel for the weekend. We're actually ahead of where we would have been if the Democrats had dug in their heels and made us stay in session through the weekend, overnight. So I think we're moving along with good pace. We're going to get Lee Zeldin confirmed to the EPA today. We're going to start working on Doug Burgum. And I predict before we leave for the weekend, if we leave, we'll confirm Doug Burgum to be Secretary of Interior, Chris Wright to be Secretary of Energy, and Doug Collins to be Secretary of Veterans Affairs.
That's terrific. Congrats on that. We'll be watching that. Now the work begins in terms of executing the president's agenda. What do you favor? Putting everything in one big bill? How will you execute the president's agenda, including the extension of the tax cuts?
I'm with the president on this one. I favor whatever we can get 218 votes and 51 votes in the Senate for to actually make America safer and more prosperous, to extend and enhance those tax cuts, to secure our border, to unleash American energy production, to rebuild our military. I don't think most Americans care that much about how we get it done, just as long as we get it done and make sure that America is safer and more prosperous than it was for 4 years under Joe Biden's failed presidency.
Well, I certainly want to get to rebuilding the military. I love what you all are talking about, but let's talk first on China and your book, The 7 Things You Can't Say. China is pushing back on the CIA, finally admitting that COVID likely originated from that lab in Wuhan. China's foreign ministry is claiming that it is extremely unlikely that the pandemic was caused by a lab leak. All of this coming just 2 days after CIA Director John Ratcliffe was sworn in. He joined me on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch this.
I had the opportunity on my first day to make public an assessment that actually took place in the Biden administration. So it can't be accused of being political, and it does assess. The CIA has assessed that the most likely cause of this pandemic that has wrought so much devastation around the world was because of a lab-related incident in Wuhan. And so we'll continue to investigate that moving forward. But I think it was important for the American people to see an institution like the CIA get off the sidelines and be truthful about what our intelligence shows, at the same time of protecting us from adversaries like China if they caused or contributed to this.
But of course, Senator, you were the first to flag that COVID did leak from the lab, likely. You were with me in February 2020, and your work speaks for itself. Here it is.
China was lying from the beginning, and they're still lying today. This virus did not originate in the Wuhan animal market. The virus went into that food market before it came out of that food market. We also know that just a few miles away from that food market is China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that researches human infectious diseases. Now, we don't have evidence that this disease originated there, but because of China's duplicity and dishonesty from the beginning, we need to at least ask the question to see what the evidence says, and China right now is not giving any evidence on that question at all.
Senator, thank you for your leadership and your incredible work. You nailed it back then and continue to show incredible leadership. What should we understand about communist China?
Yeah, Maria, being on your show talking about this with you 5 years later is like a trip down memory lane or deja vu. Because, as you say, it was on your show that I first said where any person with common sense and two eyes would have concluded that this virus almost certainly came from a laboratory. I was pleased to see that CIA has now reached that same conclusion. And as Director Ratcliffe said, that happened on Joe Biden's watch. I read that report before Director Ratcliffe publicized it. It happened in the final week of the Biden administration. It cannot be accused of a politicized intelligence assessment. That's the best evidence we have. I think the question now is whether we're going to make communist China pay. I write in my new book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China, that China is an evil empire, that China is waging economic world war. China is preparing for war. China has infiltrated our society and our government, and the only way to stop this is to recognize the threat. 7 Things You Can't Say About China tries to ring the alarm bell for every American about the threat that communist China poses to our way of life. There are some things we can do right away. I have legislation that I once sponsored with Secretary of State Marco Rubio that I now continue to sponsor with others like Josh Hawley that would take away China's permanent most favored nation status. We can make sure that we're building our military in a way that deters Chinese aggression in the Western Pacific. President Trump is talking about posing across-the-board sanctions on Chinese products. We need to reshore a lot of critical manufacturing and other industrial production so we're not dependent on China for critical things like rare earth elements or basic pharmaceuticals. These are all things that China has done to challenge our global primacy, and we have to recognize the threat if we're going to beat that challenge back.
Well, your book is incredibly important. Thank you for the book, because the public does need to understand the threat here. Would you support removing Chinese stocks from American exchanges, sir? I mean, look, we know that even companies that are sanctioned are still trading on U.S. exchanges, basically enabling ordinary Americans to invest in those companies and, in effect, fund the expansion of our ¡1 adversary.
Yeah, and Maria, oftentimes they don't meet our disclosure standards either for things like basic audit. So I've long thought this is another foolish example how our elites for 40 years have let China play by one set of rules while we play by the other set of rules. We should not allow these companies with opaque financials who are based in China to be listed on our stock exchanges, not just to fund their operations that can be used to undermine American workers and businesses or national security, but also as a real threat to fraud on American investors. It's just one more example of how China has insinuated itself into every corner of American life. Again, I lay out in 7 Things You Can't Say About China how they've done it in Hollywood, in the media, in universities, in Washington, D.C., at state and local governments as well. The threat is real, and it's actually more present in your daily lives than you probably realize.
Exactly. And by the way, now we're talking about the intellectual property theft, perhaps including DeepSeek, right? I mean, the whole market goes nuts over the Chinese AI program, DeepSeek, and now we're hearing, well, wait a minute, how did they get this? How did they do it? Maybe it was partly stealing intellectual property from America.
Yeah, Maria, China has a long history of that. In every FBI district around the country, there's open investigations into Chinese espionage, whether it's industrial espionage against companies or espionage against, say, our national laboratories or U.S. government-funded research at universities. This happens all the time. China brings companies into China. It forces them into joint ventures. It steals their technology, and then it kicks them out. I lay out all of these malicious practices in 7 Things You Can't Say about China to, again, ring the alarm bell for normal Americans to realize that the threat to China is present in their everyday lives.
So why would General Milley want to tell China secrets that the U.S. was going to do before it was announced? Look, I know you have mixed feelings about this. I want to get your take on it. The Pentagon has stripped the security detail clearances for General Mark Milley after doing the same to John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Milley, I believe it's partly because under the first Trump administration, he wanted to alert China to anything that Trump was going to do. Is that the same? Do you feel the same about the security detail here as you would for Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, who obviously have fatwas on their back? The Iranians want them dead?
Well, Maria, all these people are targeted by Iran because they carried out President Trump's policy in his first term. I understand the president has had a falling out with them and soured on them, and that's fine. But this is more about innocent Americans and the president's ability to implement his agenda going forward than it is about them or his feelings for them. So it's possible that these people could be targeted by Iranian assassins in public where innocent bystanders could be injured. This could have a chilling effect on the people around the president right now on giving him the advice that he needs and carrying out his decisions, not just against Iran, but say against China or Mexican drug cartels who are present in our streets today. It may deter some people from going to work for the administration. Some people might fear that if they go to work to crack down on Mexican drug cartels, that they could be targeted next. And I know some people have said that these individuals, could pay for their own security. They're now wealthy. That's not really an adequate answer, though, because private security contractors don't have access to law enforcement information in the intelligence community. That information has been critical, for instance, in thwarting a threat against one of them just a couple summers ago that was imminent. So I would encourage the president to revisit this. It's not about what he feels about these men or what they're doing now. It's really about his ability to implement his own agenda and ensuring that no innocent Americans are harmed as bystanders.
Understood. Fair point. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth met at the White House yesterday to discuss Trump's plans for an Iron Dome-like U.S. defense system. Trump will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu next week at the White House, and the Senate Democrats are blocking a bill sanctioning officials from the International Criminal Court who issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Your reaction?
Well, this is just another example of the Democrats saying one thing and doing another. They often claim that they're supporting Israel, but in the end, they block a bill while Benjamin Netanyahu is facing an illegitimate arrest warrant from this kangaroo court. But Maria, it's worse than that. This is not primarily about Israel or other allies. This is about our own troops. This kangaroo court has repeatedly investigated American troops who served overseas in the last 25 years and made threats that they might actually go forward with prosecutions and arrest warrants. So this is not primarily about protecting our friends in Israel, although it will do that. It's about protecting our own service members from this illegitimate kangaroo court. And every Democrat but John Fetterman yesterday voted to leave our troops exposed.
That's unbelievable. Real quick on this Iron Dome for America executive order. I'm very excited to hear these plans. Is this going to spawn a new effort, a massive effort to increase our innovation and armament in the military? I know you've spoken a lot about the lack of ships in the Navy, certainly relative to what China has. So I'd like to get your thoughts on what's needed. And you're talking about $120 billion for defense in the reconciliation package.
Yeah, Maria, like Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, and I have long advocated for a robust and effective missile defense over our North American homeland. We don't want to be deterred by China and Russia's growing missile forces from defending our own interests around the world, from standing up from Chinese aggression, whether it's military aggression or economic aggression. Of course, we should have a strong missile defense to protect Americans from the growing threat of China and Russia and even other nations like North Korea pose to our homeland.
All right, Senator, thanks very much. I hope I didn't talk you out there. Please have some hot tea there. I can hear your voice is going. Thank you for being here, sir, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Maria.
Senator Tom Cotton. We'll be right back.